All right, you can make your checks out to T. Heath and give it to either one of the T.
He's laughing.
All right, we are at Act 3, Scene 3.
Translate that to page numbers.
That's page 62. I'll start it out and pass it to Jerry.
Act 3, Scene 3?
Yep. Jailer, look to him. Tell me not of mercy. This is the fool that lent out money gratis. Jailer, look to him.
Hear me.
No, Jerry.
Hear me yet, good Shylock. I have my bond. Speak not against my bond. I have sworn on an oath that I will have my bond. Thou callest me dog before thou hadst a cause. But since I am a dog, beware of my fangs. The Duke shall grant me justice. I do wonder. Thou naughty jailer, that thou art so fond to come abroad with him at his request.
I pray thee, hear me speak.
I'll have my bond. I will not hear thee speak. I'll have my bond, and therefore speak no more. I'll not be made a soft and dull-eyed fool, to shake the head, relent, and sigh, and yield. The Christian intercessors bow not. I'll have no speaking. I will have my bond.
It is the most impenetrable cur that ever kept with men.
Let him alone. I'll follow him no more with bootless prayers. He seeks my life. His reason well I know. I oft delivered from his forfeitures many that have at times made moan to me. Therefore he hates me.
I'm sure the Duke will never grant this forfeiture to hold.
The Duke cannot deny the course of law, for the commodity that strangers have with us of Venice, if it be denied, will much impeach the justice of the state, since that the trade and profit of the city consisteth of all nations. Therefore go. These griefsome losses have so baited me that I shall hardly spare a pound of flesh tomorrow to my bloody creditor. Well, jailer, on. Pray, good Bassanio, come to see me pay his debt, and then I care not.
Some people get bored very easily. In myself, I have found that boredom is the result of self-conceit. If I think I should be entertained by something new every minute or something very exciting, then I find repetition very boring. But if I've been humbled so that I'm open, or if I'm more faithful and willing to accept things, I actually like repetition. And I find that each replication in a repetition can open you up to something new. There are probably limits to this, but I haven't found them yet. Now, mysticism has had a lot of things to say about repetition, and we have looked at some of them in the past. At one time, we talked about how repetition, especially in things like chanting, organize the vital body, which works by waves of energy. Like having a regular schedule and doing a lot of repetitive activity allows one to live longer. People who have regular schedules don't weaken their bodies quite so much. We've also mentioned that dramatically, repetition can be used to magnify emphasis. It works with a comedian telling a joke and coming back to a punchline many times, or Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar when he comes back again and again to that line, but these are honorable men, and each time he raises the rabble even more. You see, we see a different use of repetition. If you look at the first two short speeches of Shylock, they're each about a dozen lines. Within that short space, he repeats himself 5 times and almost 6. One is 5 are literal repetitions, one is very close to that. Now it does add emphasis, but that's not why it is there. It shows his fixation. He's almost monomaniacal in his fixation. He's stuck on the law, and especially his self-satisfaction with the law, because he's seeing or playing the law or playing cause and consequence to his own end. He wants vindication. The fixation is evidenced, and we'll discover that more after the theme talk at the end of these. We have about, I think, 3 more meetings after this. So it may stretch out to 4. In Antonio's speech around line 26, there's another facet of the law that is explicated. It also affords us to get to a subject that we couldn't get to at another occasion. About 11 years ago, we were studying myths of heroes and how they represented initiates. We looked at some of the work and some of the qualifications for initiation and all of that. And in those studies of myths of heroes, we went through Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle. We should have read the libretti at that time, but we didn't. It would have been a great thing. But anyway, in the opera, Siegfried is the hero, and he has slain the dragon, and he has tasted the dragon's blood, and that opens him up intuitively, and he's rushing up the mountain of truth to seek a treasure that his intuition tells him is more valuable than the gold of Fafnir, which doesn't really much interest him. Fafnir was the dragon, and Nothung, the courage of despair, was the sword that he used to slay the dragon. Anyway, as he's going up the mountain, Wotan appears and tries to impede him. He intervenes by putting his staff of authority in the path of Siegfried. But Siegfried cuts right through the staff with one stroke. And the reason that Siegfried can do that is because the staff has been weakened. It has been weakened by engraving the runes in it, the runes that are a delineation of the law. And that's the dilemma that is alluded to in the speech by Antonio. The law tries to promote absolute justice. However, when it's taken to the letter of the law, to the last detail, it isn't just, because there's always a truth that transcends it. In this case, we can see there is a truth and a goodness that transcends the case of Antonio, and he can't get to it because the law is standing in the way. It's almost like the staff of Wotan that's standing in the way. As Antonio notes, the law is necessary. Society can't function without law. We as individuals can't learn without the principle of cause and consequence for perfect feedback. Because if we don't have that kind of perfect feedback, we can go on making error after error after error. But as good as these features are concerning the law, they do not produce absolute justice. Now, it's paradoxical how many people benefit by playing the law. I've run into a lot of people that do things in this life because they want to make sure they have a good life for themselves in the next life. And they're more in touch with playing the law than they are with living within it as a means to get to truth and justice. Shylock is playing the law. Even, well, it's paradoxical, playing the law. Even when we have done everything by the book, when we've acted in accordance with the law, very often it happens to me that I'm still ashamed at times because my intuition lets me know that there was something beyond what was expected or what was accepted or what was covered by the law. In biblical Christianity, this is called going the extra mile. This is one of those paradoxes that we find when we get deeply involved in understanding life, that the strength of something is also its weakness. The law, we have said, is the product of reason. And the law is reasonable. When we encounter paradox, it's often the case, or usually the case, that we have reached the extent of reason. We understand that there is a truth beyond the limits of reason, but we can't get there with reason. We've taken it as far as it can go. It's not pure truth. Reason is the vehicle for pure truth. Pure truth is loving. And in that, in some ways, it's unreasonable, or better said, non-reasonable, or even better yet, it is supra-reasonable. Now, this is a humanities example of what in mathematics and logic, where they study only the simple stuff, is called Gödel's theorem. Roughly speaking, the proof of Gödel's theorem says that there are things which a consistent logical system cannot determine. Meaning to say that there's truth beyond any system that tries to get at truth. So, if the law and logic are taken exclusively, they are traitorous to the goodness and the love and the truth which they serve. Ironically, as Paul says in the Bible, the aim and end of the law is love. And so it's a funny thing. It's a paradox that the law, which does so many wonderful things, fails at the thing that it most serves, and its strength is its weakness. So it is through the law that we have come to understand and appreciate the loving creative spirit that works through it. We'll have more to say on this when we get to the theme talk. Let's read the next scene. Who's up?
Madam, although I speak it in your presence, you have a noble and a true conceit of godlike amity, which appears most strongly in bearing thus the absence of your Lord. But if you knew to whom you show this honor, how true a gentleman you send relief, how dear a lover of my Lord your husband, I know you would be prouder of the work than customary bounty can enforce you.
I never did repent for doing good, nor shall not now. For in companions that do converse and waste the time together, whose souls do bear an equal yoke of love, there must be needs a like proportion of lineaments, of manners, and of spirit, which makes me think that this Antonio, being the bosom lover of my Lord, must needs be like my Lord. If it be so, how little is the cost I have bestowed in purchasing the semblance of my soul from out the state of hellish cruelty. This comes too near the praising of myself. Therefore no more of it. Here other things. Lorenzo, I commit into your hands the husbandry and manage of my house until my Lord's return. For mine own part, I have toward heaven breathed the sacred vow to live in prayer and contemplation, only attended by Nerissa here until her husband and my Lord's return. There is a monastery 2 miles off, and there we will abide. I do desire you not to deny this imposition, the which my love in some necessity now lays upon you.
Madam, with all my heart I shall obey you in all fair commands.
My people do already know my mind, and will acknowledge you and Jessica, in place of Lord Bassanio and myself. So fare you well till we shall meet again.
Fair thoughts and happy hours attend on you.
I wish your ladyship all heart's content.
I thank you for your wish, and am well pleased to wish it back on you. Fare you well, Jessica. Now, Balthazar, I have ever found thee honest true, so let me find thee still. Take this same letter, and use thou all the endeavor of a man in speed to Padua. See thou render this into my cousin's hand, Dr. Bellario, and look what notes and garments he doth give thee. Bring them, I pray thee, with imagined speed, unto the Tranix, to the common ferry which trades to Venice. Waste no time in words, but get thee gone. I shall be there before thee.
Madam, I go with all convenient speed.
Come on, Nerissa. I have work in hand that you yet know not of. We'll see our husbands before they think of us.
Shall they see us?
They shall, Nerissa, but in such a habit that they shall think we are accomplished with that we lack. I hold thee any wager, when we are both accoutred like young men, I'll prove the prettier fellow of the two, and wear my dagger with the braver grace, and speak between the change of man and boy with a reed voice, and turn to mincing steps into a manly stride, and speak of phrase like a fine bragging youth, and tell quaint lies, how honorable ladies sought my love, which I denying, they fell sick and died. I could not do withal. Then I'll repent, and wish for all that I had not killed him. And 20 of these puny lies I'll tell, that men shall swear I have discontinued school above a 12th month. I have within my mind 1,000 raw tricks of these bragging jacks, which I will practice.
Why shall we turn to men?
Fie, what a question that, if thou wert near a lewd interpreter. But come, I will tell thee all my whole device when I am in my coach, which stays for us at the park gate, and therefore haste away, for we must measure 20 miles today.
Well, I think Portia is probably my favorite character in all of Shakespeare.
Jeez, I didn't think you cared.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful character. And her first speech is as beautiful as one would expect coming from that kind of a character. That first line at line 10 is beautifully stated, and it's got all of the nuggets of truth and virtue in it. I think we've all felt it at different times in life, but who could say it as pleasantly and as simply as she says it? I never did repent for doing good. I've sure repented a lot of times for not doing good. It's just such a good thing to repeat, or to strengthen the good by repeating it several times like this. That one line shows not only a love for doing good, but also a remembrance of times in repentance, perhaps even sorrow for not having done good. So it's a line that shows that she's virtuous and not just innocent. She's made her mistakes. In astrology, the ascendant in the rising sign and the first house are said to indicate the outward person. The personality. And the personality is a residue of outward form experiences through many, many past lives, even going beyond human past lives. The word personality comes from the Greek word persona, which means mask. And to some extent, personality is a mask. It is a mask of the inner being. For example, I have Neptune in Virgo rising, and Neptune is prone to giving out deceiving or deceptive information, and Virgo seems really pleasant. Inwardly, I have the Sun in Scorpio, and I think it's been said of me that he seems really nice and pleasant outwardly, but inwardly he's an SOB. And that's what that kind of combination can mean. Also in astrology, the seventh house is the house indicating opportunities to experience and to understand individuality. And in this sense, the word individuality means the inmost being. To us, and often to people outside of us, this is hidden. Others can't perceive our inner being, and we're so caught up in externals and material things and saving the appearances of our own personality that we can't see ourselves. The seventh house is also the house of opportunities for marriage and partnership, as well as opportunities to know the partners. Now, these two functions of the seventh house are not mutually exclusive. Individuation, or individuality, I should say, and marriage partners are often one and the same thing. Thus, we have Portia alluding to an old saw that has been around for centuries that goes something to the effect of, if you want to know what a man is really like, look to his wife, because she reflects the hidden inner part. However, Portia doesn't stop there. She goes much further with it. With great insight, she reasons that if Bassanio truly loves Antonio very deeply, then Antonio must be like what Bassanio is like in his real love nature. And if Bassanio is really her other half, his bosom friend must also be like his other half and like herself. Therefore, she's not bailing him out, she's bailing out herself as his other half. Now, this is very clever, and it bears out Christian mysticism. The idea is if that one loves it, if one loves an individual deeply enough, that individual becomes the doorway to altruistic love. The loving of the common spirit that we all share as one, as humanity. If we love humanity as a whole, that's an abstraction. And one can love an abstract idea, but it is not the same thing as loving collectively the spirit of all of humanity. But if we love one individual, that one individual is the focus of the spirit that is in all of humanity, and that loving one individual very deeply opens one. This is what's behind the whole theory of masters. In spiritual philosophies, where you love the master so deeply that you penetrate into to the spiritual world beyond even the individuality. It's a wonderfully brief statement that she makes, and it's a demonstration of the words of Christ. Love thy neighbor as thyself. It's a perfect example of that because she loves Bassanio and Bassanio loves Antonio. She automatically loves Antonio because Antonio represents herself vis-a-vis the channel through Bassanio. Beautiful way of doing it. For astrology buffs, her speech is a living example of the 11th house being the house of friendship and altruism, being the ultimate goal of all of the Aries sign houses, the 3rd, the 7th, and the 11th. Now, Shakespeare does very clever and witty things through Portia. He must have loved working with that character because of what he does. At line 60, he does something more with her. In that speech, which we just read, she describes all the foolish ways of young men when she's telling Nerissa what they must be like when they're disguised. The description is witty, and it's very observant, and it is very clever. But beyond that, it is also very subtle, because she's doing it even before she's doing it. She says, when we're like young men, I'm going to be more like a young man than you. And she's already, because young men are competitive. And she's already working into that before she's even done it. A subtle, very clever way of doing things. All right. Let's read Act 3, Scene 5. You're up.
Yes, truly look for you, the sins of the father are to be laid upon the children. Therefore I promise you, I fear you. I was always plain with you, and so now I speak my agitation of the matter. Therefore be of good cheer. For truly I think you are damned. There is but one hope in it, that it can do you any good. And that is but a kind of bastard hope, neither.
And what hope is that, I pray thee?
Mary, you may partly hope that your father got you not, that you are not the Jew's daughter.
That were a kind of bastard hope indeed. For the sins of my mother should be visited upon me.
Truly then, I fear you are damned, both by father and mother. Thus when I shun Scylla your father, I fall into Charybdis your mother. Well, you are gone both ways.
I shall be saved by my husband. He hath made me a Christian.
Truly, the more to blame he. We were in reason he should never come to heaven. Why, if two gods should play some heavenly match, and on the wager lay two earthly women. Oh, well, shows how much I know. Thank you. Truly, the more to blame he. We were Christians enow before, even as many as could well live one by another. This making of Christians will raise the price of hogs. Well, I guess it does make a difference. If we all grow to be pork eaters, we shall not shortly have a rasher on the coals for money.
I'll tell my husband, Lancelot, what you say, here he comes.
I shall grow jealous of you shortly, Lancelot, if you thus get my wife into corners.
Nay, you need not fear us, Lorenzo. Lancelot and I are out. He tells me flatly there's no mercy for me in heaven because I am a Jew's daughter, and he says you are no good member of the Commonwealth, for in converting Jews to Christians you raise the price of pork.
I shall answer that better to the Commonwealth than you can, getting up of the Negro's belly. The more is with child by you, Lancelot.
It is much that the more should be more than reason. But if she be less than an honest woman, She is indeed more than I took her for.
How every fool can play upon a word. I think the best grace of wit will surely turn into silence, and discourse grow commendable and none only but parrots. Go in, Sirrah, bid them prepare for dinner.
That is done, sir. They have all stomachs.
Lord, what a bit snapper are you? Then bid them prepare dinner.
That is done too, sir. Only cover is the word.
Will you cover them, sir?
Not so, sir, neither. I know my duty.
Yet the more quarreling with occasion. Wilt thou show the whole wealth of thy wit in an instant? I pray understand the plain man in his plain meaning. Go to my fellows, bid them cover the table, serve the meat, and we will come in to dinner.
For the table, sir, it shall be served in. For the meat, sir, it shall be covered. For your coming in to dinner, sir, why let it be as humors and conceits shall govern?
Oh dear discretion! How his words are suited. The fool hath planted in his memory an army of good words. And I do know many a fool that stand in better place, garnished like him, that for his tricksy words defy the matter. How cheerest thou, Jessica? And now, good sweet, say thy opinion. How dost thou like Lord Bassanio's wife?
Past all expressing. It is very meet the Lord Bassanio live an upright life, for having such a blessing in his lady, he finds the joys of heaven here on earth. And if on earth he do not merit it, in reason he should never come to heaven. Why, if two gods should play some heavenly match, and on the wager lay two earthly women, and Portia one, there must be something else pawned with the other, for the poor rude world hath not her fellow.
Even such a husband hast thou of me as she is for a wife.
Nay, but ask my opinion too of that.
I will anon. First let us go to dinner.
Nay, let me praise you while I have a stomach.
No, pray thee, let it serve for table talk. Then howsoever thou speakest, among other things, I shall thy justice.
Well, I'll set you forth.
Well, that first speech brings us back to some of the issue of race and the Jews and the fact of prejudice. When we spoke last on that subject, we spoke about races and cultures and religions as tools for evolutionary advancement. They were to provide different flavors of experience, to bring out the different necessary facts and talents that are latent in the character of each of us. Often, though, they had to be pitted against each other to bring out some of those qualities. Beside being vehicles for bringing out flavors of experience, the races also have a vertical component to them. By passing through them successively as they come into being, they act like rungs on a ladder, taking us to a newer and higher level all the time. Now, the last time when we spoke, we mentioned that identification and attachment are the two great dangers when passing through races, cultures, and religions. Identification is in almost all cases weakening to individuality. And individuation is the ultimate objective of this differentiation. Attachment obviously thwarts all progress and timely development. Now, this passage or these passages elucidate further and discuss some of the solutions to the problems. And these passages are crafted very wisely. In every other instance when the matter of race and religion or culture has been brought up, the setting was serious. And in such a serious setting, people take themselves and the issues way too seriously. And if there is identification with the race or culture or religion that you're in, that means self-righteous indignation and condemnation of somebody that is in the other community, which is exactly what we have seen in every other case in this play when the subject has been brought up. In this instance, it is being spoken of humorously. Now, Shakespeare does this on other occasions. There are famous passages that have very recondite esoteric knowledge in them that are clothed in humbug, nonsense humor. And this is one of those cases where he treats something that is very serious best by treating it humorously. It's almost like saying a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And sometimes it goes down without even being noticed. And that's hopefully what happens here. In evolution, it appears we usually experience things first in matter and in our physical bodies, and then later we awaken spiritual consciousness as a result of that experience. For example, there's a school of thought that says you can't dream something you've never seen. I don't agree with that school of thought, but in most cases it holds true. So what happens is we usually see something first, and when the experience of seeing and interacting with something has sunk into us, at a later time, we can create using the same idea or the same form or something like that. This, in genetic conditions, in racial bodies, this was also true. People in all racial groupings in the past of our history were the most important thing was that people stayed within the race. Out of that genetic condition called race is where the cultural emphasis came. And eventually the cultural emphasis or the inward meaning of this group of people with bodies capable of experiencing something from a given point of view, that blossomed, and it superseded the racial thing. Now, this seems to hold true in large and in small, because for all of humanity, races were necessary first. And now we don't need races. Culture has superseded races. It is that through those nuclear little in-group experiences, all of humanity has come to the point that it can have a general culture or a universal culture without there having to be a racial structure to produce it. Now, Lancelot's first speech points to that fact of racism. And racism not in a pejorative sense, but just saying that there are races and that there are differences in those races and that those differences are to given ends. He alludes to a Bible passage, Exodus 20, verse 5, where the sin, especially the sin of idolatry, which is a materialistic sin, will be carried through several generations. Now, this means several things. In the times pointed to in the Old Testament, people passed on not only DNA and RNA, but the stuff that is in the memory. And the memory is more than just the structure. There is an etheric structure that carries the memory of all of the incidents of both parents in the sperm and egg. And it used to be that people, when they were said to have lived a long time, what that really meant was that they lived in the pictures in the bloodstream of the people who still had the internal vision, and they could see what their ancestors had done. This is why ancestral worship was so strong. But if we think about this statement, everybody loves their children, and everybody loves their grandchildren, which can be done without the tension of having to bring up your own child. So it's really a severe statement to say that your sins are going to be carried for several generations. That's something that really puts somebody in line. So we're talking then about a genetic purpose or a genetic reason for staying within the race. In a very clever way, at line 12, Shakespeare corrects Lancelot by Jessica's statement informing him about the sins of her mother. Because in Judaism, you are not considered a Jew. Like if you try to get into Israel, you're not considered a Jew unless your mother was a Jew. If your father was a Jew and your mother was a Gentile, you are not considered a Jew. So she corrects him there and does it quite subtly. Now, in this back and forth between Jessica and Lancelot, there are a whole bunch of things at play. First, there is what we talked about the last time the subject came up, the hybrid Jewish race, which is a step between the post-Atlantean races and the Atlantean Semites, who are not the Jews, but they were the original Semites from Atlantis, and by mixing with people that they were not to be mixed with, they produced this hybrid Jewish race that was forbidden. It's referred to here as the sins of the fathers. Now there's a much more serious problem for some human entities. Surely not all of them, but for some. The ones who have identified and have become very strongly attached to racial bodies. And they exercise their free will by coming back to those racial bodies every time because that's where they have their identity. Another thing that's back and forth in this conversation, it's all mixed together, it's not one thing and then another, is the contrast of Judaism as the old and Christianity as the new. However, the Christianity practiced in Shakespeare's time was certainly not true Christianity and certainly is not the way of the future. The true Christianity has yet to come. Now, in these speeches, there's a lot of subtlety, and there's a lot of archaic language, there's a lot of puns and other wordplay, and there's ambiguity. So to try to do running commentary, as we're trying to do, and to do a linear interpretation is exceedingly difficult. These difficulties notwithstanding, which means I'm going to plunge you. Prepare everyone.
We have stomachs.
Okay.
The implications made jestingly about bastardry as being a means of salvation for the Jews are consistent with the findings of modern mysticism. We just said a few moments ago that all of humanity has reached a state where we can work culturally without having to first have had a racial basis to bring us to that level. So all of humanity is at that level. So mysticism claims that at this time, all interracial marriage, which is being referred to here as bastardry, is pro-evolutionary. It breaks up any possible or certain attachment to racism. We're in a place where we're transitioning from evolutionary experience through form to evolutionary experience through life and through culture. In that, the path of individuation, which each of us is following, has passed from race to nation to clan to family into marriage, and it is intended to end up in individual awareness. It's one of those very beautiful things about the first and seventh house, that the personal separation is made more acute by the differentiation that comes in relation to a partner who is your other half. So to identify and to cling to race is utterly opposed to the whole process. And if it's extreme, it's almost a curse in terms of evolutionary purpose. So as suggested here, interracial marriage may indeed be the salvation. But it is not a salvation that can be solved completely by the body or by genetic things, because we're going beyond genetic things. We're going into cultural things. But the genetic mixing, the interracial marriage, breaks down the, I hate to use the word, the purity to which people become attached. They want that one thing and that one thing only. So it's a situation, or it is a process that is not applied exclusively to the Jews, but it has been most successful with the Jews who are intentionally Jews life after life after life, because they can't cling to that race. And if that race gets dispersed, it breaks things up. And it's really a hard thing now. Israel is not going along with Project Genome, because what they're finding out, there are several different kinds of Jews in Israel. And the European Jews feel that they are the superior Jews. And what they're finding out from Project Genome is that the Mideastern Jews and even some of the African Jews are more purely Jewish genetically than the European Jews, and they don't want that to come out. It's that much that there is that kind of attachment. You just have to let go of that. So, if we look at that broader context, Judaism and the Old Testament represent the old ways. And the old ways have much less freedom. You had, the laws were extremely detailed. If you read the early books of the Bible, the detail of the laws, it's onerous to have something on your back like that all the time. However, if you live within the law, you can feel, hey, I'm all right. I'm keeping the law perfectly, and there's sort of a relief in that. But for somebody who wants freedom, it's not the case. Now, races as evolutionary vehicles, we've been saying, were developed to specific ends. They were chosen or developed with those ends in mind. The original Semites, according to mysticism, who are not the current Jews, were chosen because they had the genetic makeup and the evolutionary development most suitable to the world as it is now. The giants who still breathe through gill slacks, as the story tells us, couldn't live in this kind of world. And the consciousness of cunning that the Atlanteans had would also not be functional in a society that is rational and tending toward abstraction. Before the Spirit is indwelling and capable of direction from within, it is guided from without. And there's little freedom. Not only are there laws, there are racial spirits that direct people. As individuation is carried out, and we become very unique individuals, the Spirit becomes more and more indwelling within the personality. And as the Spirit becomes indwelling, it becomes awakened through the buffets of the world. All of the things, we go back to Hamlet, I guess, but that's a little too much. And as we become indwelling and awakened, our divinity is brought to the fore, and we become creative. We are creative free agents. That's what the new religion is. And since it's all about freedom, we choose it, and we are not chosen to it because of some genetic condition or physical condition or because of all the things from our past lives. We choose it because inwardly we have the intuitive conviction that we want to be free and we want to live lives in this evolution in freedom. That's a really big thing. That's the new way. This freedom and creativity are spoken quite freely about by the biblical Christ. Unfortunately, it isn't necessarily that much in Orthodox Christianity or in Christian churches. Now, the real Christianity that we're talking about, let's just not call it Christianity, even though there is a spirit that can be called Christ at the heart of it. It doesn't have to be that. We're not talking about Jesus. Let's call it the religion of freedom and creativity. That can be found in any religion. That can be found in any culture. This means that the people who are choosing themselves for the future do not have to come through any particular religion. They have to live by creative freedom and by living through the intuition that comes from the Spirit within. Biblical Christ says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." You could modify that and say, you shall know the truth, and living the truth in freedom shall make you free. It would be a more explicit statement of what's at the front of that. The sooner we can free ourselves from races, from conventions, from belief systems, and all the things that bind us and blind us, the sooner we'll be able to see that truth. There's the lovely line at 34 that we can see that Jessica is a Democrat. She's a Jewish Democrat because the Republicans are supply-siders. They believe that if you take the supply away, is how you control something. The Democrats usually are demand-deciders, and they say you get rid of the demand and not the supply. In this regard, I happen to be in harmony with the Democrats. I don't believe that the war on drugs will ever be successful because you don't take away the problem just by taking away the drugs. In fact, you make a person weaker if the person isn't confronting what's before them. You make a person stronger by by making a person stronger. You take away the demand. Around line 36, there's those lovely puns upon more and more. And if you follow the jesting there, it does the very same thing that we've tried to do logically. It takes the whole concept from the Jews and it universalizes it to blacks, represented by Moors in this case. It tries to show that the whole concept of interracial marriage and breaking people from racial ties is a positive thing. All right. Let's redo the long one. I guess I'm off to start with. I get the short line. Act 4, Scene 1. This is a long scene. It's 456 lines long. We'll be reading a good bit tonight. What? Is it Antonio here?
Ready, so please your grace.
I am sorry for thee. Thou art come to answer a stony adversity, inhuman wretch, uncapable of pity, void and empty from any dram of mercy.
I have heard your grace hath taken great pains to qualify his reversed course. The sentence he stands obdurate, and that no lawful means can carry me out of his envy's reach. I do oppose my patience to his fury, and am armed to suffer with a quietness of spirit the very tyranny and rage of his.
Go, one, and call the Jew into the court.
He is ready at the door. He comes, my lord.
Make room and let him stand before our face. Shylock, the world thinks, and I think so too, that thou but leadest this passion of thy malice to the last hour of act. And then, 'tis thought, thou'lt show thy mercy and remorse more strange than is thy strange apparent cruelty. And where thou now exacts the penalty, which is a pound of this poor merchant's flesh, thou wilt not only loose the forfeiture, but touch with human gentleness and love, forgive a moiety of the principal, glancing an eye of pity on his losses that have of late so huddled on his back, enow to press a royal merchant down and pluck commiseration of his state from brassy bosoms and rough hearts of flint, from stubborn Turks and Tartars never trained to offices of tender courtesy. We all expect a gentle answer, Jew.
I have possessed your grace of what I purpose, and by our holy Sabbath I have sworn to have the due and forfeit of my bond. If you deny it, let danger light upon your charter and your city's freedom. You'll ask me why I rather choose to have a weight of carrion flesh than to receive 3,000 ducats. I'll not answer that, but say, it is my humour. Is it answered? What if my house be troubled with a rat, and I be pleased to give 10,000 ducats to have it baned? What, are you answered yet? Some men there are love not a gaping pig, some that are mad if they behold a cat, and others, when the bagpipe sings in the nose, cannot contain their urine. For affection, master of passion, sways it to the mood of what it likes or loathes. Now for your answer. As there is no firm reason to be rendered why he cannot abide a gaping pig, why he a harmless necessary cat, why he a woolen bagpipe, that of force must yield to such inevitable shame as to offend, himself being offended, so can I give no reason, nor will I not, nor I will not, more than a lodged hate and a certain loathing I bear Antonio, that I follow thus a losing suit against him. Are you answered?
This is no answer, thou unfeeling man, to excuse the current of thy cruelty.
I am not bound to please thee with my answer.
Do all men kill the things they do not love?
Hates any man the thing he would not kill?
Every offense is not a hate at first.
What? Didst thou have a serpent sting thee twice?
I pray you think the question with the Jew. You may as well go stand upon the beach and bid the main floor date his usual height. You may as well use question with the wolf, why he hath made the ewe bleat for a lamb. You may as well forbid the mountain pines to wag their high tops and to make no noise. And they are threatened with gusts of heaven. You may as well do anything most hard as seek to soften it. And what's harder is Jewish heart. Therefore I do beseech you, make no more offers, use no farther means. With all brief and plain conveniency, let me have judgment and a view of the truth.
With that 3,000 ducats, here is 6.
If every ducat in 6,000 ducats were in 6 parts, and every part a ducat, I would not draw them. I would have my bond.
How shalt thou hope for mercy, rendering none?
What judgment shall I dread, doing no wrong? You have among you many a purchased slave, which like your asses and your dogs and mules you use in abject and in slavish parts, because you bought them. Shall I say to you, let them be free? Marry them to your heirs. Why sweat them under your burdens? Let their beds be made as soft as yours, and let their palates be seasoned with such viands. You will answer, the slaves are ours. So do I answer you. The pound of flesh which I demand of him is dearly bought, is mine, and I will have it. If you deny me, fire upon your law. There is no force in the decrees of Venice. I stand for judgment. Answer, shall I have it?
Upon my power I may dismiss this court, unless Bellario, a learned doctor, whom I have sent for to determine this, come here today.
My lord, here stays without a messenger with letters from the doctor. You come from Padua.
Bring us the letters. Call the messenger.
Good cheer, Antonio. What man courage yet? The Jew shall have my flesh, blood, bones, and all, ere thou shalt lose for me one drop of blood.
I am a tainted wether of the flock, needless for death. The weakest kind of fruit drops earliest to the ground, and so let me. You cannot better be employed, Bassanio, than to live still and write mine epitaph.
Came you from Padua, from Bellario?
From both, my lord. Bellario greets your grace.
Why dost thou whet thy knife so earnestly?
To cut the forfeiture from that bankrupt there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not on thy soul, but on thy soul, harsh Jew. Thou makest thy knife keen, but no metal can. No, not the hangman's axe, bear half the keenness of thy sharp envy. Can no prayers pierce thee?
No, none that thou hast wit enough to make.
O be thou damned, inexcusable dog, and for thy life let justice be accursed. Thou almost makest me waver in my faith to hold the opinion with Pythagoras that souls of animals infuse themselves into the trunks of men. Thy churlish spirit governed a wolf who hanged for human slaughter, even from the gallows did his fell soul flee. And whilst thou layest in thy unhallowed dam, infused itself in thee, for thy desires are wolfish, bloody, starved, and ravenous.
Till thou canst rail the seal from off my bond, thou but offendest thy lungs to speak so loud. Prepare thy wit, good youth, or it will fall to fearless ruin. I stand here for law.
This letter from Bellario doth commend a young and learned doctor to our court. Where is he?
He attendeth here hard by to know your answer, whether you'll admit him.
With all my heart, some 3 or 4 of you go give him courteous conduct to this place. Meantime, the court shall hear Bellario's letter.
Your grace shall understand that at the receipt of your letter I am very sick. In the instant that your messenger came, in loving visitation was with me a young doctor of Rome. His name is Balthazar. I acquainted him with the cause and controversy between the Jew and Antonio the merchant. We turned over many books together. He is furnished with my opinion, which, mattered with his own learning, the greatness whereof I cannot enough commend, comes with him at my importunity to fill up your grace's request in my stead. I beseech you, let his lack of years be no impediment to let him lack a reverend estimation, for I never knew so young a body with so old a head. And leave him to your gracious acceptance, whose trial shall better publish his commendation.
You hear the learned Bellario what he writes, and here, I take it, is the doctor come. Give me your hand. Come you from old Bellario?
I did, my lord.
You are welcome. Take your place. Are you acquainted with the difference that holds this present question in the court?
I am informed thoroughly of the cause, which is the merchant here, and which the Jew.
Antonio and old Shylock both stand forth.
Is your name Shylock?
Shylock is my name.
Of a strange nature is the suit you follow. It is such rule that the Venetian law cannot impugn you as you do proceed. You stand within his danger, do you not?
Aye, so he says.
Do you confess the bond?
I do.
Then must the Jew be merciful.
On what compulsion must I? Tell me that.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above the sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself, and earthly power doth then show like his God when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, the strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there.
My deeds upon my head, I crave the law, the penalty, and the forfeit of my bond.
Is he not able to discharge the money?
Yes, here I tender it for him in the court. Yea, twice the sum. If that will not suffice, I will be bound to pay it 10 times over on forfeit of my hands, my head, my heart. If this will not suffice, it must appear that malice bears down truth. I beseech you, rest once law to your authority. Do a great right, do a little wrong, and curb this cruel devil of his will.
It must not be. There is no power in Venice can alter a decree established. It will be recorded for a precedent, and many an error by the same example will rush into the state. It cannot be.
Daniel comes to judgment. Yeah, Daniel. O wise young judge, how I do honor thee.
I pray you, let me look upon the bond.
Here it is, most reverend doctor, here it is.
Shylock, this thrice then I offered thee.
An oath. An oath, an oath. I have an oath in heaven. Shall I lay perjury upon my soul? No, not for Venice.
Why, this bond is forfeit, and lawfully by this Jew may claim upon the flesh to be by him cut off, nearest the merchant's heart. Be merciful, take thrice thy money. Bid me tear the bond.
When it is paid according to the tenure, it doth appear you are a worthy judge, you know the law, your exposition hath been most sound. I charge you by the law, whereof you are a well-dressed, well-deserving pillar, proceed to judgment. By my soul, I swear there is no power in the tongue of man to alter me. I stay here on my bond.
Most heartily, I do beseech the court to give the judgment.
Why then, thus it is. You must prepare your bosom for his life.
O noble judge, O excellent young man.
For the intent and purpose of the law hath full relation to the penalty, which heareth due upon the bond.
It is very true, O wise and upright judge. How much more elder art thou than thy looks.
Therefore lay bare your bosom.
Aye, his breast. So says the bond. doth it not, noble judge? Nearest his heart, those are the very words.
It is so. Are there balance here to weigh the flesh?
I have them ready.
Have by some surgeon, Shylock, on your charge to stop his wounds, lest he do bleed to death.
Is it so nominated in the bond?
It is not so expressed, but what of that? Toward good, you do so much for charity.
I cannot find it. It is not in the bond.
You, merchant, have you anything to say?
But little. I am armed and well prepared. Give me your hand, Bassanio. Fare you well. Grieve not that I am fallen to this for you, for herein fortune shows herself more kind than is her custom. It is still her use to let the wretched man outlive his wealth, to view with hollow eye and wrinkled brow an age of poverty, in which lingering penance of such misery doth she cut me off. Commend me to your honorable wife. Tell her the process of Antonio's end. Say how I loved you, speak me fair in death. And when the tale is told, bid her be judged whether Bassanio had not once a love. Repents but you, that you shall lose your friend. And he repents not that he pays your debt. For if the Jew do cut but deep enough, I'll pay it instantly with all my heart.
Antonio, I am married to a wife which is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not with me esteemed above thy life. I would lose all. I sacrifice them all here to this devil to deliver you.
Your wife would give you little thanks for that, if she were by to hear you make the offer.
I have a wife who I protest I love. I would she were in heaven, so she could entreat some power to change this cursed Jew.
'Tis while you offer it behind her back. The wish would make else an unquiet house.
These be the Christian husbands. I have a daughter. Would any of the stock of Barabbas had been her husband rather than a Christian? We trifle time. I pray they pursue sentence.
A pound of that same merchant's flesh is thine. The court awards it, and the law doth give it.
Most rightful judge.
And you must cut this flesh from off his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it.
Most learned judge, a sentence, come prepared.
Very little. There is something else. This bond doth give thee here no jot of blood. Words expressly are a pound of flesh. Take then thy bond, take thou thy pound of flesh, but in the cutting of it, if thou dost shed one drop of Christian blood, thy lands and goods are by the laws of Venice confiscated, under the state of Venice.
O upright judge, mark you, O learned judge.
Is that the law?
Thyself shalt see the act, for as thou urgest justice, be assured thou shalt have justice more than thou desirest.
O learned judge, mark Jew, a learned judge.
I take this offer then. Pay the bond thrice and let the Christian go.
Here's the money.
Soft. The Jew shall have all justice. Soft. No haste. He shall have nothing but the penalty.
O Jew, an upright judge, a learned judge.
Therefore prepare thee to cut off the flesh. Shed thou no blood, nor cut thou rest no more, but just a pound of flesh. If thou takest more, or less than a just pound, be it but so much as makes it light or heavy in the substance, or the division of the 20th part of one poor scruple. Nay, if the scale do turn but in the estimation of a hair, thou diest, and all thy goods are confiscated.
A second Daniel, a Daniel Jew, and now, infidel, I have you on the hip.
Why doth the Jew pause? Take thy forfeiture.
Give me my principal, let me go.
I have it ready for thee. Here it is.
He hath refused it in the open court. He shall have merely justice and his bond.
A Daniel, say I, a second Daniel. I thank thee, Jew, for teaching me that word.
Shall I not have barely my principal?
Thou shalt have nothing but the forfeiture, to be so taken at that terror. Jew?
Why, then the devil give him good of it. I'll stay no longer question.
Sorry, Jew. The law hath yet another hold on you. It is enacted in the laws of Venice, if it be proved against an alien, that by direct or indirect attempts he seek the life of any citizen, the party against the which he doth contrive shall seize one half his goods, the other half comes to the privy coffer of the state, and the offender's life lies in the mercy of the Duke only, against all other voice. In which predicament, I say, thou standst, for it appears by manifest proceeding that indirectly and directly too, thou hast contrived against the very life of the defendant, and thou hast incurred the danger formerly by me rehearsed. Down, therefore, and beg mercy of the Duke.
Beg that thou mayest have leave to hang thyself, and yet thy wealth being forfeit to the state, thou hast not left the value of a cord. Therefore thou must be hanged at the state's charge.
That thou shalt see the difference of our spirit, I pardon thee thy life before thou ask it. For half thy wealth it is Antonio's, the other half comes to the general state, which humbleness may drive into a fine, unto the fine.
Aye, to the state, not for Antonio.
Nay, take my life and all, pardon not that. You take my house when you do take the prop that doth sustain my house. You take my life when you do take the means whereby I live.
What mercy can you render him, Antonio?
A halter gratis, nothing else for God's sake.
So please, my lord, the Duke and all the court, to put the fine for one half of his goods, I am content. So he will let me have the other half in use to render it upon his death unto the gentleman that lately stole his daughter. 2 things provided more, that for this favor he presently become a Christian. The other, that he do record a gift here in the court of all he dies possessed unto his son Lorenzo and his daughter.
He shall do this, or else I do recant the pardon that I late pronounced here.
Art thou contented, Jew? What dost thou say?
I am content.
Clerk, draw deed of gift.
I pray you give me leave to go from hence. I am not well. Send the deed after me, and I will sign it.
Yet be gone, but do it.
In Christ's name shalt thou have 2 godfathers. Had I been judge, thou shouldst have had 10 more, to bring me to the gallows, not to the font.
Sir, I entreat you home with me to dinner.
I humbly do desire your grace of pardon. I must away this night toward Padua, and it is meet I presently set forth.
I am sorry for your leisure serves you not, Antonio, to gratify this gentleman, for in my mind you are much bound to him.
Most worthy gentlemen, I and my friend have by your wisdom been this day acquitted of grievous penalties, in lieu whereof 3,000 ducats due unto the Jew, we freely quote your courteous pains withhold.
And stand indebted over and above in love and service to you evermore.
He is well paid that is well satisfied, and I, delivering you, am satisfied. And therein do account myself well paid. My mind was never yet more mercenary. I pray you know me when we meet again. I wish you well, and so I take my leave.
Dear sir, of course I must attempt you further. Make some remembrance of us as a tribute, not as fee. Grant me 2 things, I pray you, not to deny me and to pardon me.
You press me far, and therefore I will yield. Give me your gloves. I'll wear them for your sake. And for your love I'll take this ring from you. Do not draw back your hand. I'll take no more, and you in love shall not deny me this.
This ring, good sir, alas, it is a trifle. I will not shame myself to give you this.
I will have nothing else but only this. And now methinks I have a mind to it.
There's more depends on this than on the value the dearest ring in Venice will I give you. and find it out by proclamation. Only for this I pray you pardon me.
I see, sir. You are liberal in your offers. You taught me first to beg, and now methinks you teach me how a beggar should be answered.
Good sir, this ring was given me by my wife, and when she put it on, she made me a vow that I should neither sell nor give it nor lose it.
That skill serves many a man to save their gifts. If your wife do not imagine me, and know how well I have deserved this ring, she would not hold out enemy forever for giving it to me. Well, peace be with you.
My Lord Bassanio, let him have the ring. Let his deservings and my love withal be valued against your wife's commandment.
Go, Gratiano, run and overtake him. Give him the ring and bring him, if thou canst, unto Antonio's house. Away, make haste. Come, you and I will thither presently, and in the morning early will we both fly toward Belmont. Come, Antonio.
Wow. Well, there's actually enough interesting material in this section for several thoughts. And
here.
In 9 minutes.
I think we're going to run a little over tonight. It's because you guys read so slow.
First you make us beg.
It's a seditious lot. I'm not going to try to address everything, but it's still going to take more than what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to look at a lot of little passing things tonight, and not all of them are going to be really deep. The first is just a little passing sidelight, that Shylock swears by our holy Sabbath, he says literally. Now, to us it seems a little unusual to swear by a day. I think what is happening here is he's swearing by what the Sabbath stands for. Just like when Christians cross themselves, it's what the cross stands for, the sacrifice. So in one way, the Sabbath stands for the Jews for a covenant which they believe God has made with them. It is part of all those laws and forms. The Sabbath also stands for faithfulness, and swearing by it would be swearing by faithfulness. The Sabbath is probably the most faithful observance in history, if not the one of the most faithful in history. It has been celebrated and observed faithfully for thousands of years from antiquities. It's one of the only markers we have that hasn't really been touched. It's ruled by Saturn, who will rule its time in faithfulness, and also the hard, legalistic, unforgiving attitudes. Then if we go to the speech where Shylock tries to explain his hatred, it amounts to saying that he can't explain his hatred. It's non-rational. And his whole explanation is what we would call in our language a cop-out. Instead of the doctrine of affinities, he propounds a doctrine of antipathies. He states that he believes that there are natural enemies, and it's built right into them, and that you can see it right there before you. And he goes on by saying that there are natural disaffinities between emotions which he calls affections. Now, from a mystical point of view, this is not a big step, because the group spirits of the animals which guide them and bring them through their experiences, they function from the desire world, which is their work, or which is their field of evolutionary activity. The whole idea of antipathies countering each other is not new. It's Goethe, for example, had antipathies between chemical elements. And so it is in harmony that in the same way that there would be no good play without adversaries, or races couldn't grow without having other races as adversaries, that there is in the world of forms and in the law, that there is something of antipathies. These dissonances between the antipathies seem to increase the further we go down into matter on the spirit-matter pole. But what is not in accord with what mystics find to be true is his attitude. He refuses to take responsibility for being author of his own affections. He tries to externalize them by saying that emotional forces work on him from without, similar to the way a bat works on a ball. Responsibility is the opposite side of the coin from freedom. By denying responsibility, he automatically denies himself any possibility of freedom to do anything. This is what happens in the law. If you live in the law, and the law is a big machine, there's no freedom. With that being the case, it's no wonder that he should be stuck in what is a very progressive evolution. Since he blocks responsibility and freedom, he blocks the intuition which originates in the realm of freedom, the life spirit or the Buddhic plane or whatever you want to call it. With no intuition to play on the essence of his past experience, he has no conscience. And he can say he has done no wrong, as he does in line 89. I'm just within the law, no conscience. While lacking conscience, he abounds in reason. He has reason enough that in every argument against him, he can turn the tables. And he does that with sauce, between lines 90 and 104. He has their hypocrisy dead to rights. Nothing like an enemy to know every little Achilles heel that you have. But the mind, like its ruler Mercury, is a servant. And it'll serve whoever will use it. In the hands of the Spirit, it's a marvelous tool. In this case, it's in the egoistic lower nature's hands. Ultimately, in this, there is a fallacy. He talks like someone who wants to make a point, and who wants to be heard, and he wants to be recognized for his truth, for the truth of his arguments. In short, he wants to be known as a truth knower, which means the self. So ultimately, he has to believe, arguing the way he does and wanting what he wants, that somebody is minding the shop, and that somebody is responsible for those thoughts and for his points of view. You can't have it both ways. If we want to be rational free agents, respected as knowers of the truth, we have to take responsibility for all of our deeds and not say that we are blameless. If confronted with this line of thought, people like him try to avoid that conclusion by saying something like, but those are thoughts. that you are speaking of. I was speaking of emotions which can't be controlled. And there are people that believe that way. Where in the front island is it? There are people that believe that the emotions can't be controlled. He could be one of them because he denies any claim to his feelings or being appreciated for them, only his thoughts. However, earlier in the play, he sang a much different tune. He says, when I am pricked, I bleed like everyone else. When I'm called a dog, I feel the same way that anyone would, being called a dog. Freedom is freedom. If we're really free, we are not subject to any laws of nature unless we freely allow ourselves to be subject to them. On another subject, there are times that I disagree with Shakespeare. And one of them is at Antonio's speech at line 70. It's a classical piling of Mount Ossa on Mount Pelon, which is a mythical allusion to a vain, glorious end that one reaches by excess. His speech is eloquent, but it serves no dramatic purpose, and it serves no spiritual purpose, but to vituperate on Jews. And it's, to me, revolting. It doesn't develop either the character of Antonio or Shylock, and it doesn't heighten the drama. The actions that follow do those things, but this doesn't. It's something, this is what's so strange about this, that if this goes way back into history, we must all have something of this deep in our consciousness from the distant past. Because it's surprising what people calumniate the Jews. Both Max Heindel and Rudolf Steiner said terrible things about the subject. People that I think are lofty in other circumstances, I think what they say about the subject is revolting. And I always hear the thing, well, that's the way people thought in those times. Well, if you're an initiate, you're supposed to be above the times. So I really don't understand it, but this is a subject that is charged for some people. It's a very highly charged speech. On another subject, Gratiano, at line 123, does seem to get at least near to the heart of the psychology of Shylock, but I'm not certain of it. Going along with the imagery of his speech, it seems to be a double-edged sword or a double-edged blade. Seems to think envy or jealousy is at the root of Shylock's behavior. Psychologically speaking, jealousy does not seem to spring from the lack of something, be it an object or an objective. It seems to spring from the subconscious or partially conscious feeling of inadequacy in the subject, not the object. Scorpio is often an indicator of jealousy. And that is because it tends to focus destructively on inner darkness. Othello is a Scorpio-like character. He's not jealous because Desdemona might love Iago. He's jealous because he subconsciously doubts how much and how well he loves her. And he's had some heavy trips laid on him for being a Moor. He projects his doubts on her. And when he kills her, it's only in part with feelings of spite. If I can't have her, nobody can, which is also a Scorpio thing. It is very negative, but it is a matter of destroying the object on which he projects, using it as a scapegoat. And by that he vainly hopes to get rid of his inadequacy by destroying the object that he's projected on. It is a matter of trying to cure something negative by something even more negative. Obviously, the way to be cured is to build something positive. The reason that all of this is said, because at least Shylock may have inadequacies and resultant jealousies. He's been slammed pretty hard verbally by the Christians in this play. And words can be very powerful, especially when chosen and aimed by an observant enemy who knows one's weaknesses. There is vaingloriousness in Zionism, enough to make Gentiles feel inadequate. There's vaingloriousness in Arianism, in Messianic Christianity, and in other anti-Semitic communities. And there's enough of it for the Jews to feel inadequate. And for centuries, both communities have not been shy about stating their supremacy. For centuries, Christians have been deemed unclean and God's not chosen people. For centuries, Jews have been deemed materialistic mongrels. Since we're all unenlightened, we all have doubts, conscious and subconscious. Because of this, at some level, we believe these things when they're told to us, especially when they're told to us forcibly and repeatedly. Even worse, we tend to believe the other community when it says something derogatory or implies that we are inferior. Sigmund Freud, a Jewish psychoanalyst who was keenly intuitive, said, words are powerful things. So in this, we are all killing Desdemona, or Antonio, or Shylock, because we can't see through our own insecure projections, and because we refuse to go strong in ourselves rather than accept negativity from others. A good example of the superiority of Shylock is at line 127. Gratiano has an immediate response, and it is of the type that is dehumanizing or subhumanizing in the mongrel type statement. You've got a lot of work to do. Now there are two other items of interest in the speech of Gratiano. The first involves a doctrine called the transmigration of souls. That is the focus of the spirit passing into various animal forms and then back to human. The statement of Pythagoreans as it's made in this play is exactly backwards. He's saying that an animal soul came into a human when the statement was that it went the other way. There are several doctrines of transmigration, and we'll look at some of them. Most of them are misunderstandings. For example, In Central American calendars, they're shaped like swastikas, or they're shaped like arms on spiral galaxies. And along these arms are animal images. The passage of time is represented not up and down one of the arms, but by successively jumping from animal to animal, from arm to arm. Anthropologists believe that this is a tale of transmigration. I think they're wrong, because in reality, the calendar is like a zodiac. It has many more than 12 animals on it, though. The circle of animals and the qualities in that calendar indicate a resolution of feeling, sort of like the way music resolves or the way emotions resolve. You lose somebody at death, at first you don't believe it, and then you're angry, and then you're sorrowful. There's a whole evolution of things that one follows through, and that is what the calendar was like. These people were very much attuned to inner reality, and in the association with inner reality to outer events. There we're at the end. Similarly, in Buddhism, there is a mandala called, and I'm going to use the English pronunciation, and Sharji's going to cringe in his chair, because it will not be recognized. It's called the Bharva Chakra. Bharva Chakra. It is supposed to be a roadmap of this early life and a roadmap of what occurs after death until there is rebirth. And in that diagram, in that mandala, one of the sectors in the Great Wheel is called the place of the animals. Again, people who are not familiar with spiritual reality have taken this to be a statement of transmigration. And they're wrong again. What this really is a statement of function in the desire world. We mentioned it earlier that animals do not have cells, at least not yet. Animals are not internally directing their lives. Until a self is developed and becomes indwelling and awakened, the personal existence is overshadowed and directed by a group consciousness, a group spirit, which brings it to the experiences it needs in evolution until it can become a self from those experiences. Plants have group spirits also, but since the majority of plants do not have desire bodies, the group spirit functions from the ethers. The animals have desire bodies, but no mind. So the group spirit functions as a mind to them, but it works on them through the desire world and through the desire body. Seers who experience this sometimes call the desire world the world of the animals, because that's where those spirits are functioning. Now this dovetails very nicely with what we said about the Central American calendar, because the desire world is called by some the astral plane. And part of the reason for that is because the astrological forces as motivators are most active in the desire world. The animals on the calendars are pointing to realities in the world of feeling and emotion, moods in the desire world where the animals receive their direction. This opens up yet one more layer of meaning about all of this. No, I lost my place here. We know that the signs of the zodiac, in studying them, are very large-scale, complex, archetypal fields of ideas. They're huge fields of attitudes and ideas. These large-scale fields are made manifest through group species and animal species. Some of the beings that guide different races function from this world and function under zodiacal signs. Some distant undertones in this whole business can even be seen in human beings. What happens is we say that someone may have a fish-like face because they're manifesting the same kind of idea from the spiritual world. The Pythagorean idea of transmigration, which is mentioned here, is something different. Pythagoreans were developing clairvoyance at a time when involuntary clairvoyance was waning in humanity. As humanity was becoming more and more focused in matter and developing more and more materialistic attitudes. And one of the effects of the materialism was that people had more and more security in the physical body and knew less about what happened beyond the physical body. As a consequence, they became attached to it. And one of the effects of that was that when people left their bodies at death, they were so insecure and without faith in the spiritual worlds that they would jump into an animal's body and stay in the animal's body as long as that animal lived. And because they still hadn't learned their lesson, they would sometimes jump into another animal's body at that point. At that time in history, this phenomenon was so prevalent that the first young seers at that time thought it was normal. And some of them, it's attributed to the Pythagoreans, but I can't say for certain that it was, tried to formulate a doctrine of transmigration on the basis of this observation. What happened is that eventually seership became deeper, and with that greater depth, they could see the true life cycle between death and rebirth, and the error was corrected, and when that correct understanding of it came into the general background consciousness of humanity, this didn't happen so much anymore. It still does happen when people commit suicide in one life. Very frequently, when they have to suffer being hollowed out for as long as they would have lived, that they have to suffer the pressure of the creative archetype that makes their life and their body, that suffering is so grave that in the next life they hang on to the body desperately. And sometimes when the body dies, they hang on to the body, they'll jump into the body of an animal and do the same thing. But in general, that's all pretty much pure. So, Lancelot has it backwards, but basically that's what's involved in ideas of transmigration. I have one other little teeny tiny thing that I went into. We're going to have to continue with this next time. We may reread the whole scene, just because it's so beautiful. And in that same quote, in the latter half of it, something comes up. And in this, I believe Shakespeare is a victim of rumor or hearsay or exaggeration. In recorded history for the past several hundred years, I believe I read it that there have been only 2 or 3 authenticated cases of wolves attacking and killing human beings, and those were under very extreme or unusual circumstances. Wolves get an undeserved bad reputation. We should all look at that movie or see, you know the book Never Cry Wolf, or the movie? beautiful. It's about a man who goes up to the Arctic and lives with the wolves, and he's friendly with them like puppy dogs. That's enough for tonight, I guess. It's probably too much for tonight.
If I understood it correctly, which I kind of doubt, Portia was kind of the decision she made there before she let him have his pound of flesh. That was almost Solomon-like. Does she represent him?
No. That's what we're going to talk about next time. We're going to talk about the decree next time.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to let them tenterhooks for
2 weeks.
Another new jacket here, huh? Flashy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.